Hi, Katie. How are you doing this week?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. So last week when you came in, we were kind of going over um, how you were feeling invalidated by your mom,
Mhm.
and when you're making certain choices as an adult, you didn't feel like she necessarily validated those, and she kind of undermined you to do in a lot of ways. Um, is that something that's still bothering you, or?
Yeah, we actually we had kind of uh, a situation this morning, like an encounter before our meeting today that sort of brought that back up to the surface for me. Um, so it's definitely still on my mind.
Okay. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So my mom and I have we've kind of gone back and forth about like safety within parenting, I guess, since pretty much since I was pregnant, I guess 6 years ago, with my daughter. Um, and just kind of like her mentality of like, well, you survived, so it's fine, whatever. Um, Whereas like I get a little worried with like car seat safety in particular. So this morning, she was going to pick up my daughter. So I just said, "Oh, okay. Do you have your car with you?" And she said, "No, we're in my brother's car, and he doesn't have a car seat, so Nora can just ride home or ride to our house in the middle of the back seat or whatever." Um, and it made me really anxious, just like the thought of it, and even just like kind of confronting her and saying like, "No, I'll drive her to your house in my car. It's fine." She got upset that I wasn't fine with my daughter just kind of riding in the back seat without her car seat.
hmm hmm Okay, so it sounds as though similar to last week, where she kind of was invalidating your parenting. Like, you want your daughter to be in the car seat because it's what you feel is right. It's the safest way for her to travel. Um, and so in that, you kind of are probably still struggling with openly discussing with your mom that you feel like she's invalidating what you're actually saying.
Yeah, like even though studies show that it's safer for a child to be in a car seat, um, it doesn't really matter, and it almost feels like because I'm saying that like immediately invalidates it to her.
Okay. Okay. And can I ask, do you do you believe in the invalidation? Does it when she says something that kind of invalidates you, do you actually think that she might be right, or how do you feel about that?
Um, so like when it comes to the car seat stuff, I know that like the studies are on my side. Um, but I guess it does like bring up some like self-doubt within myself. Like, am I being too overprotective?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily with the car seat, but just in general, like we've had arguments about um, my daughter spending the night at her house because there are just like some basic safety things within her house that she's not worried about, but I am. So we've, I don't know, I guess had disagreements about that, and so I wonder, am I just too overprotective or not?
Okay. So I'm curious if this week you might be open to trying out some DBT exercises that could potentially help you with building a little bit more confidence in your ability to feel like you can trust in validating your stance when you're confronting your mom in certain circumstances when it comes to your parenting choices. And this one, for example, with the car seat situation. Do you feel open to that, to doing that this week?
Yeah, I'd be curious about that, definitely.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm wondering if you might have some art materials and around watercolors, colored pencils, woodwork.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And we need some paper as well.
Okay.
I'm assuming you got there. Okay, perfect. All right. So what I'm going to have you do is, well, what we're going to do is we're basically going to pick out just a blank piece of paper,
Okay.
and whichever material feels more comfortable to you, go ahead and gravitate towards. The point of doing this art therapy exercise is that it basically creating art is self-validating in itself, because you're basically your intention is that you're just focusing your time on yourself is worthy. So so by doing this exercise, you actually feel like you yourself are worthy to devote time and care towards. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So within this exercise, I'm basically going to just ask you to kind of recreate the feelings or anything else that comes up around this interaction that you had with your mom this last week about the car seat disagreement, is, if that's okay to kind of like label it that way, is that it was like kind of like a disagreement that the two of you had.
Yeah.
And so before that, if it's okay with you, I'd like to try to set an intention going into this exercise. So if there's something that you might be able to say to set your intention forward towards creating this piece, what might that sound like?
I think my intention would probably be like, by doing this, um, I hope to feel less less frustrated um, about my interaction with my mom, I guess, and less frustrated about the insecurities that I feel around it.
Perfect.
Maybe.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
So with that, holding that in kind of the present state that we're in right now, I want you to kind of just like touch whichever materials that are in front of you, whatever comes to you more, organically and comfortably, and go ahead and just take a few minutes and play with those materials on the paper.
Okay.
And Kate, would you mind, can I ask you to maybe try to angle the camera a little bit towards yourself while you're creating, just so I
Sure.
can kind of take a
Like
peek?
to the picture.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. And then Katie, whenever you feel ready, let me know when you're ready to stop.
Okay. So I think I'm ready.
Okay. All right, wonderful. So part of this strategy is to then go ahead and look at the art and kind of maybe explore what surfaced while you were creating this. So when you were thinking about the interaction that you had with your mom, and then the feelings that kind of were present, and then what organically surfaced within your artwork. So what just let's start with just what kind of, how would you, if we looked at your artwork, if you can kind of like maybe pick it up and show.
I can hold it up.
Yeah. So can you kind of maybe talk to me a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah. So what the first thing that kind of like that I thought of when I started to make it was this like, I guess this like feeling that I strive for in parenting of like my daughter to be like free and, you know, like really, I guess, carefree and, I don't know, like, not like a wild child in like the sense that she's wild, but like to be really carefree and run around outside and have fun and be uninhibited, I guess maybe is like a better word. Mm-hmm. And I initially drew like her having a good time outside. And then I started to like think about the feelings that I guess come up with these kind of conversations with my mom, where I sort of feel like, I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind is like the fun police almost. Mm. Like these concerns, I guess, that I am like the fun police when I have like safety concerns with, you know, like the layout, I guess, of like my mom's house or her dogs or like, or my daughter being in a car seat. So I don't know, like orange really stuck out to me as like a fun police color. So I scribbled kind of like over her good time, I guess, with that.
Okay. So, I mean, I feel like it's very valid for you to have kind of touched on two different topics here. One being, you know, you want your daughter to be very care and free and be able to play. And then also there's the other side that's very valid in wanting to have the safe play, right? So you're kind of, you hold that position of like, you know, safety. You're looking out for your daughter's best interest. So I could definitely see the validity in both of those aspects of your artwork. After creating this piece, do you feel like if, say, your mom was looking at this piece and you kind of like explain that to her, do you feel like she would be able to understand what you were trying to portray in your artwork?
Maybe if I described it to her, but I think that she would get really defensive.
Okay.
If I could try and explain it.
Okay. And so I also want to kind of touch on one area. Before we started this piece, you were feeling a little bit unregulated about what, like the feelings of feeling anxious and confronting your mom. And so I'm curious now, how are you? Do you feel like you're feeling more regulated now after completing this exercise?
I noticed like a little shift, kind of when I started scribbling over her with the orange. Like I don't know, like a shift in my like demeanor where I started to feel like sillier about it, I guess, or like, and able, I guess maybe better regulated is a good way to describe it in terms of like recognizing, the differences, I guess, between allowing her to be carefree outside as opposed to like safe in the, having like safety standards in the car, and like just recognizing the difference and, like you said, kind of the validity of both.
Yeah. So could you agree that you do feel like your reasoning for wanting to keep your daughter safe, um, and whether it's the car seat or playing outside, that you actually feel that what you have to say is valid?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. I mean, I completely agree and do feel like your concerns, and as a parent, that it is very valid to want to keep her safe and to be able to have these conversations with your mom. So I do hope that this exercise was helpful. I'm curious if we might try one more exercise today, that could potentially even be helpful, like later on, after if you encounter some kind of confrontation or anxiety in the future, with your mom, that might be something that you can actually utilize. So the second exercise is a dialectic exercise. And so basically what I'm going to have you do is pick up another piece of paper. And this time, if you want, you can do, you're basically either you can create symbols or you can actually use words. And so dialectics is basically the understanding that two things can be opposite, but that they can actually hold the same truth or hold the truth at the same time. And so the point is to kind of gain an acceptance, and that there's a change factor and an acceptance factor in this. So basically what I'm going to have you do is, if you can draw a circle in the center of your piece of paper.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to have you, basically, I want you to draw two lines that converge to like connect. And so basically we're going to, yeah, so almost like, two lines that start out maybe and then come together. Does that make sense? Two separate lines that come together in the center.
In the center of the circle?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, that'll work. That's perfect. If you want, you can actually draw that line all the way, like
all the way to the bottom?
To the bottom, yeah. Okay. And so that line is basically going to illustrate the synthesis between both sides of the dialectics. Okay. And so a dialectic basically looks like, an example would be, sometimes I make mistakes, but I hope to like make less mistakes in the future. And so that's just a general example of what a dialectic might look like. So okay. When you think about when you have conversations with your mom in regards to safety, or any other, it doesn't have to be safety, but it could be something else and related to something that's kind of happened recent with your mom. Do you feel like you could create a dialectic that, so you have one side and then you have the other side, right? So, and then in the center would be the synthesis. So basically, if you can create, you can use words or you can use symbols. And so on each side of the circle, I want you to create either using words or symbol.
Okay.
All right. Katie, do you feel like you have two symbols down or words?
Yeah, I've got two opposites down, or
Okay.
one set
Perfect.
of opposites at least.
Wonderful. Would you mind holding it up and showing?
My artistic. So
Awesome.
I have, they're not that easy probably to understand, but I have like a seatbelt over here that I guess I was thinking of as like extreme safety, or like, I don't know exactly. But, and then on the other side, I have, like a car accident happening, to kind of like represent the other side, or like the opposite, or my fear almost,
Okay.
not following the safety of being in the car.
Do you feel like we could try to put that into an actual dialectic sentence? So utilizing the car safety
Yeah.
and then the accident. What do you think that would be?
I feel like I am, so like on the accident side, I guess I feel like if I'm not um, strict enough with car seat safety, then something bad could happen.
Okay.
And then on the opposite end of that, um, I also feel like if I'm too strict with that sort of stuff, then I'm like a killjoy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that, um,
Yeah. And so I think that both of those dialectic statements seem very valid and truthful, because as a parent, you would be worried that if your daughter wasn't safe, she could be harmed. Like if she wasn't wearing her seatbelt, there was an accident, right? So you want to keep her safe, but you also want to make sure that you're not maybe being too overly safe. Does that sound about right?
Yep, that sounds like a really good description of what I'm feeling.
Okay. So so the synthesis between these two is that you want to be able to keep your daughter safe while also having a balance so that you don't feel like you're being too overbearing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you're looking at the artwork, do you feel like there is anything additional that would maybe was left out that you feel like that you could have added to?
I think, I guess like I also, around the same kind of ideas, is like this feeling of, like I'm doing what I feel like is, or like I insist upon what I feel is right. Um, but I also worry, I guess along the same lines, about being like the fun police,
Mm-hmm.
or being, I guess, about being too overprotective with that stuff.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So you feel like through this exercise, you were able to gain a little bit of a new awareness towards the importance of safety, while also recognizing that the fear factor could get in the way of maybe having fun with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that it made me realize was like, my mom doesn't follow like great safety things within her home, and in terms of like keeping an eye on my daughter. So I think of like, maybe she's not ready for like overnight visits, but we could come to like a compromise of shorter visits.
Okay, awesome. I feel like that is a really great new awareness after utilizing this exercise. Do you feel like this exercise was helpful?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So I guess I would love to see if you might be able to choose one of the two over the next week as kind of like a homework assignment. So whenever, if something comes up between even your mom or even somebody else over the next week, if you would like to try to utilize one of these exercises afterwards, and then to kind of self-regulate, and then, or the dialectic component kind of helps you to visually perceive how our thoughts work. So we kind of do the side to side, and then we can see maybe what the new awareness is in the center.
Okay.
With the synthesis between the two. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I can do that. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Katie. Well, it was really great to see you this week, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks. You too.
Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too.